Hello friends, welcome back to Strategic Management, and we are talking about strengthening companies' competitive position. We were discussing in last session about that there are some disadvantages of being first mover as well, and I would be building upon the chord for discussing the scope of as far as the strengthening of companies' competitive position from the point of this being the first mover disadvantage. Advantage we have talked about, and there can be so many advantages, and we have talked about Amazon as a main case study to refer to how advantageous it was for Amazon to go for as far as being a first mover in retail space and those kind of things go. But and you see there are several examples in that space. For example, ZTV came up as a first mover in terms of cable based television in this country, and they acquired a huge space and they did exceptionally well. There was a time when Zee was the main television for India. Still Zee acquires a good space, a very good space as far as the situation goes. Then you see NDTV, my good friend Mr. Himanshu Shekhar Mishra has always been telling me how NDTV has grown. They are in, if I am not wrong, 125 countries as of now, and they focused upon news. They started from election analysis and then political analysis. They went to go for as far as news, and then they spread and they became huge as far as the whole situation goes. So now they are doing exceptionally well. They have a very large footprint and so on. India Today, it's a big kind of story for all of us. We all know that Times of India, the Bennett company, and Dainik Jagran in Hindi space, Malayalam Manorama in Malayalam space, and so on. We have so many success stories in media and so on. And then in advertising we have wires and plastic, and so on. So several kinds of, then airlines, we have several kinds of airlines and so on, and Air India had a huge first mover advantage in India before anyone could think of, and so on. So but there are so many disadvantages, and I was talking about Reva, this electric car which could have changed the landscape for India's automotive industry, but definitely there were disadvantages. They could not scale up and so on. And then have you heard of, and I would have talked about that briefly also, who launched first palm top, that is mobile based kind of a communication in terms of handheld computer devices. So there was a company who launched first handheld music device. I am sure it was not Sony, and you may find out. Then there were several advantages which Apple could derive out of as far as iTunes go, and iMusic goes, and iPods go, and so on. And then there are several kinds of companies which had first mover advantage in terms of as far as whole scenario of televisions go, and home appliances go, and so on, and refrigerators, so on. So let us see. You see, one example of first mover disadvantages which authors have talked about, and I am referring to Lanzola and Suarez, the half truth of first mover advantage, Harvard Business Review, a very interesting article. And this one example is where being the first was disadvantageous is the case of Osborne 1, one of the earliest portable computers. You see, probably you would not have heard the name, and if you would have, then definitely you would commend this organization for coming up with a portable computer. So Osborne 1, released in 1981, was one of the first commercially successful portable computers. Despite being an early entrant in the portable computer market, the Osborne 1 ultimately faced challenges that led to its downfall. The disadvantages of being the first mover in this case included technological limitations, lack of scalability, and intense competition from rivals with superior products. There are several kinds of products, for example, LED lamps. If you will try to find out that which is the organization which actually started focusing upon mobile app based LED lamps, you would realize that many companies who are doing exceptionally well at this moment, they were not the one. Then talking diaries, the electronic diaries. I have told this about talked about this kind of a thing in my subject, I think, innovations in marketing and marketing of innovation, when I was referring to that Mr. Sam Petroda wrote this algorithm of talking diaries. electronic diaries, and there were some other companies which produced and marketed those. Mr. Pitroda held the patents for many of these such kinds of inventions and so on and so on. But there were many companies which entered into this kind of a space, digital watches, digital clocks and so on. There are several kinds of companies. So I think Orpat was one of those earliest most entrants in those kind of things, and so on. And probably they are maintaining a growth stage, but I am not sure if they are the market leaders as such or no. So in many cases, people who initiated, they created a market for that kind of a thing, and they could not do well because of, as you know, as we have talked about, technological limitations, lack of scalability, intense competition. And technological limitations is that they could foresee that this is the kind of add-on which they would be doing in due course of time as far as production and supporting their production growth with this kind of a technological infusion. But they very well knew and understood beforehand that they won't be able to put this thing together. Probably they had this in mind that if they won't be able to pursue that somehow, then they would offer themselves for an acquisition, which many companies do. And I would not say that Flipkart also thought of this when they were going for being acquired. I don't know if they actually were thinking in terms of that they wanted to be acquired someday, but definitely they were going with a fierce growth, knowing that they have some limitations in terms of, as far as they were scalable, but they had limitations in terms of as far as probably the liquidity which was required for this kind of a business to to capture that kind of a space or to maintain that kind of a growth, and as far as the whole situation goes, because developing a retail platform is a costly affair, and then maintaining it is more costly in terms of as far as running the operations and so on. Many, if I am not wrong, Skypack was the name of the company which went for becoming one of the India's initial most courier companies and so on. So they grew well as far as that particular kind of a stage of Indian courier industry goes, but somehow I don't think that they are there anymore, or they were acquired by someone and so on. I don't exactly remember what happened. But these are the examples wherein you realize that some companies, they have entered into a situation and they are doing exceptionally well, they are creating a huge name for themselves, and then intense competition they somehow they submitted to. So next is the scope of operations, and that is associated with, you see, we have talked about strategic moves, timing in last and this session, and timing, you see, I would slightly emphasize a bit more as far as beyond being related to advantage or disadvantage or first mover or not being first mover. The timing is where the acceptability, timing means the scenario is such that acceptability of whatever you are doing is high. For example, in today's environment conscious era, if you go for a wonderful bicycle, wherein that bicycle can be positioned for daily commuters within a span of 10-15 kilometers, 1. 2, that bicycle should have a provision of somehow carrying smaller kids with little kind of an umbrella kind of a thing. Basically, for example, you can go to school and pick your child and then go back home, have lunch and come back within a sphere of 4-5 kilometers, wherein young fathers, they rush to schools from their working places, they pick up their kids, they go back home. For this they use cars. Now they use cars because kids can comfortably sit in the cars, and the cars has they have air conditioning, and so kids do not feel the summer heat and so on, and so many things are there. If somehow every consideration can be looked upon, a comfortable bicycle can be designed for daily commuters, and for example, in this place Roorkee where I am sitting, there are so many working people around within the campus of Indian Institute of Technology Roorkee, as well as Army Cantonment, which is very near to this place, and then there are several other places where people work, and there are nearby schools, and there is a very close knit ecosystem within a diameter of, let us say, 6-7 kilometers at large. So catering to this city of having a diameter of 6-7 kilometers, if I do not think we require cars, and we require motorized two wheelers, because it is not environment friendly also. But then definitely there are extreme seasons in this place. If someone is watching this kind of market development scope here, and someone actually puts up this kind of a positioning associated with their product basically, and it is launched in the right time in this environment conscious era, many things can be done. This is when era is talked about. Then there is a timing associated with one part of the year, which I referred to earlier, when movies are being launched and so on. Then there is an a time of wherein you see how this world global situation is actually. Then there is a timing associated with political changes happening around the world. For example, India is going for this election, so many regional level equations are coming up and so on. So there is a timing associated with those kind of things as well. Then there is a global political scenario which is talked about to be changed when America would go to elections and so on. Then there is an association of sports and events which are coming up. For example, if Olympics is going to come and so on, Asian Games are going to come and so on, and those kind of timings and so on. So there are several kinds of elements associated with timing in terms of events, in terms of seasons, in terms of global changes, climate changes and those kind of things. But the point is that we have to choose a timing wherein acceptability of whatever we are going to do would be very high. If that is the thing, then definitely you would say that every now and then I tend to bring in the example of Patanjali, but Patanjali timing has always been right, what I think of many a times. For example, when we started fighting with avoidable diseases, then Baba Ramdev came up with a practice of yoga for a common man, and timing was so right that he gained millions of followers. He is an eminent yogi, and practices yoga to the letter and spirit basically, and he is adhered to that. And when he started demonstrating that, millions of people followed him. Timing was absolutely right. So you see, that is what the acceptability level is, when the timing is right, and if it is done rightly at that particular time, then that actually converts into a lot of profitability or growth and so on. Let us talk about scope. So there is a set of managerial decisions that can affect the strength of a company's market position. Strength of market position, wherein you see positioning and position is associated with the image and the strength of an organization within the market sphere amongst your stakeholders, your customers, retail chain partners and so on. These decisions concern the scope of a company's operations, the breadth of its activities and the extent of market reach. In a couple of sessions earlier, I was talking about that a logical progression for a company is when they start developing different value chains getting converted into a value web, and that is where the scope is. For example, I am catering to one set of customers, I am selling let us say bathing soaps to them. Can I sell detergent soaps to them as well? Or if I am selling detergent soaps to them, so can I go for bathing soaps to them? Nirma did that. And then can I go for shampoos as well? Yes, many people do that. And for example, if Jockey is coming up with a sequence of undergarments, then can they go for t-shirts as well, warmers as well, and so on. They did that. So you see, product lines, then value chains, and then the complete value web. So that is where you strengthen the market position in terms of developing the scope and through the breadth of activities and extent of market reach as such. Decisions regarding the scope of the firm focus on which activities a firm will perform internally and which it will not. Now, how to steer those activities? Should I be doing everything myself? There was a campaign when Hyundai came to India. So there was a campaign by Hyundai wherein they used to say that we manufacture everything starting from the nuts and bolts to the complete car. And that is what they were practicing, that is what they were doing. They were developing the complete ecosystem which was controlled by them. Every single part was being produced by them, and they were assembling and they were doing everything as far as the situation go. Many times people get partners for that, they offlet the jobs and so on. The scope of the firm refers to the range of activities that the firm performs internally the breadth of its product and service offerings, the extent of its geographic market presence, and its mix of businesses. So that is precisely the point when we talk of as far as the situation goes, and there is an example which strengthens this argument, and we are talking of strengthening a company's market position via its scope of operations, and I named Hyundai. There are many other organizations which do similar kinds of things. So, Ralph Lauren designs, markets and distributes fashionable apparel and other merchandise to more than 10,000 major department stores and specialty retailers throughout the world. 10,000 major department stores. In addition, it operates nearly 400 Ralph Lauren retail stores, 400, more than 200 factory stores and 7 e-commerce sites. This is in addition to serving 10,000 major department stores and specialty retailers. Scope decisions also concern which segments of the market to serve. Decisions that can include geographic market segments as well as product and service segments. Its product line includes apparels, fragrances, home furnishings, eyewear, watches and jewelry, and handbags and other leather goods. Extremely different product lines, but similar kinds of customers. So, apparels can have a logical relationship with as far as the fragrances go. It can have a logical relationship with home furnishings, probably we can develop a synergy as far as if a brand connect is there and people like your apparels, they might be going for home furnishings, although it is probably cloth based kind of a thing basically, although different manufacturing, but the connect is that brand element. The connect is that people rely on you, and the connect is that in a household people are liking some of your products, and if you add on some other product, that same household might be targeted by you. Eyewear, that definitely has a synergy with fragrances, and apparel definitely it has a synergy with as far as watches and jewelry definitely connected and so on, and handbags and other leather goods also. So, probably in many of these the suppliers would also be similar kind of, and we will be talking about vertical and horizontal scope and integration simultaneously as far as these kind of examples go. So, the company has also expanded its brand lineup through the acquisition of Chaps menswear and casual retailer Club Monaco. Decisions such as these in essence determine whether the boundaries of a firm lie and the degree to which the operations within those boundaries cohere. They also have much to do with the direction and extent of business's growth. Self-explanatory. Several dimensions of firm scope have relevance for business level strategy in terms of their capacity to strengthen a company's position in a given market. These include firm's horizontal scope and vertical scope. Now, let us see what is a horizontal scope and what is a vertical scope, and this leads to vertical integration. So, horizontal scope is the range of product and service segments that a firm serves within its focal market. Mergers and acquisitions, I would be talking about mergers and acquisitions in my next session, but just to refer to that simultaneously, because you see the point is when we are unable to horizontally develop a scope, we go for mergers or acquisitions. I mentioned that. So, mergers and acquisitions involving other market participants provide a means for a company to expand its horizontal scope. When you can't do it by yourself, you go and merge or acquire. Although I would be specifically talking about this, that is it good or not so good, or let us say apt or not so apt in terms of the vision and the mission which we have planned for our organization, and that is precisely what we have been pursuing: vision, business vision, mission, objectives and goals. We have been talking about that, and now we are somewhere stuck up with the objectives. Are we? Because of red oceans we exist in, or because of fierce competition we are going for, or because of this offensive or defensive we are talking about? Should we be thinking in terms of blue oceans before going for mergers and acquisitions, and much before that? Should we do that? Definitely we should do that. We talked about preemptive offensive strategies. You see, the point is that if we are preempting, why not to preempt in terms of innovating and going for blue oceans rather than going just for going for a linear escalation of whatever we are doing. Offensive can be when we make the competition irrelevant instead of fighting the competition, a fierce war. Why shouldn't we make them irrelevant altogether? Can we do that? If we plan for that, if we focus upon that, we definitely will be able to do that. And that is where Professor W. Chan Kim talks about focus, divergence and compelling tagline. You would remember that. You see, but the point is that how well in advance we do that. Then vertical scope. Vertical scope is the extent to which a firm's internal activities encompass the range of activities that make up an industry's entire value chain system, from raw material production to final sales and service activities. Ford Motors used to do that. We will be talking about that. So, expanding the firm's vertical scope by means of vertical integration can also affect the success of its market strategy, controlling the complete situation, going for everything, Hyundai does that. And now what are vertical integration strategies? Let us see. Amazon's expansion into logistics and delivery. Amazon has been, you see, Amazon kind of examples are very widely applicable. That is why we time and again refer to these kind of examples, so that you can easily reconcile with, you understand what we are talking of. So, it is not just a repetition, it is a meaningful addition to our discussion. So, Amazon has been vertically integrating its logistics and delivery operations to enhance its e-commerce business. The company operates its own network of fulfillment centers, warehouses and delivery services such as Amazon Prime and Amazon Logistics. By owning and controlling these aspects of its supply chain, Amazon optimized delivery times, reduced shipping costs and improved the overall customer experience, strengthening its position as a dominant player in online retail. We talked about Disney a couple of sessions back. Remember that there are several such kinds of organizations which do that, and there is a synonymity between those kind of actions and those kind of examples with these kind of situations as well. Ford Motor Company was one of the first companies to vertically integrate its production process. This meant that the company controlled the entire process of producing cars, from mining the raw materials to manufacturing their standardized parts and assembling the finished products. By doing so, Ford was able to reduce costs and exercise greater control in its production process, which further helps innovation. And that is an interesting kind of a thing. You see how far behind you can go. You can go as back as mining. Now, expanding the firm's vertical scope by means of a vertical integration strategy provides another possible way to strengthen the company's position to its core market. That is understandable. A vertically integrated firm is one that participates in multiple stages of an industry's value chain systems. And you see, whole of the situation is developing different value chains and a composite value web at the end of the day. And that is what we are talking of, strategically managing value webs. Here I reach to that situation wherein I promised that I would be talking about strategically managing things to strategically managing value chains to strategically managing value webs. I started saying that strategically managing value chains and developing value webs, but now strategically managing value webs. A vertically integrated firm is one that participates in multiple stages of industry, as I said. Thus, if a manufacturer invests in facilities to produce component parts that it had formerly purchased from suppliers, or if it opens its own chain of retail stores to bypass its former distributors, it is engaging in vertical integration. A vertical integration strategy can expand the firm's range of activities backward into sources of supply or forward towards end users. Either or both ways, either or both. Backward integration involves entry into activities previously performed by suppliers or other enterprises positioned along earlier stages of industry value chain system. Forward integration involves entry into value chain system activities closer to the end user, and we talked about Porter's 5 forces. Many a times suppliers are powerful, and you realize that you do not want to be dependent upon them because the kind of growth you are planning. So, that actually depends upon unhindered supplies. So, either you go for a fresh business associated with your own supplies, or you acquire your suppliers, and I would be coming to that acquisition. When Tiffany and Company, a manufacturer and retailer of fine jewelry, began sourcing, cutting and polishing its own diamonds, it integrated backward along the diamond supply chain. Mining giant De Beers Group and Canadian miner Aber Diamond integrated forward when they entered the diamond retailing business. That is how they wanted to capture the complete value chain in terms of the situation goes. Vertical integration strategies can aim at full integration, that is participating in all the stages of vertical chain, or partial integration, building positions in selected stages of the vertical chain. Remember one thing, you see, when you are integrating vertically, if you are going towards the end users, then definitely you have to develop some brand power also, you have to develop marketing force also, you have to develop several kinds of things in due course, but then you want a better control of that kind of a situation. Firms can also engage in tapered integration strategies, which involves a mix of in-house and outsourced activity in any given stage of vertical chain. I was talking about larger advertising companies being acquired by many manufacturers in parts or in full. I talked about that earlier. Oil companies, for instance, supply their refineries with oil from their own wells as well as with oil that they purchase from other producers. They engage in tapered backward integration. Boston Beer Company, the maker of Samuel Adams, engages in tapered forward integration since it operates brew pubs but sells the majority of its products through third party distributors. Although I personally do not subscribe to examples of alcohol or alcohol based products, but then there are examples existing in the text which we have taken to. So, it is not to subscribe that, not to emphasize that, it is a disclaimer, please do not take it that way. Now, you see, since mergers and acquisitions provide a means for a company to expand its horizontal scope and strategic alliances and partnerships provide an alternative to vertical integration, in the coming section and sessions, I would be talking in detail about mergers and acquisitions and strategic alliances and partnerships. But here, let me explain these 2-3 lines very briefly. So, when I say that mergers and acquisitions provide a means for a company to expand its horizontal scope, it is not specifically related to horizontal scope, it can be associated with vertical scope also, but this is wherein authors they talk about that it is usually observed. And when we say that strategic alliances and partnerships provide an alternative to vertical integration, then you see the point is that it is not only limited to this kind of situation, that can also be witnessed in terms of as far as horizontal scope goes. So, both the cases, the point is that whichever way you want to go, horizontally or vertically, when you find a limitation in terms of your own situation, in terms of your own development, in terms of your own resources to focus upon that kind of a thing, basically you go for either developing a new entity through mergers or by acquiring some organization which can help you there, or go for strategic alliance, basically that we will work together somehow, that can be in the form of a partnership, a joint venture, or just an alliance that okay, this is how we would support each other. Have you heard of political alliances? Yes, similar to that. And then partnerships, as I said, specific partnerships, and that partnerships can be focused in terms of technological partnerships or market partnerships or only retail partnerships, any form of partnership or a composite partnership also. So, that is how it is done, but this emerges because of limitations many a times which are not foreseen. I would be coming back to how it happens along with a discussion on why it happens, and along with that I would try to put up some part from my side suggesting that why it should not happen, and we will try to discuss this with more specifications and more details too as far as the subject goes. I will be catching up back with you very soon. Till then, goodbye.